Hello, BookTube. I have a yin and yang video for you today. I watched a couple of BookTube videos almost back to back the other day, and it struck me how alike they were, even though they were polar opposites. I watched a video on Gina Stanyer's channel, I'll leave a link to it, about the things that are cheering her up at the moment. That's all. That's all it was just things that were cheering her up in the moment. And I was watching that video. I love Gina's channel anyway, and it occurred to me how wonderful such a video is. It's very simple, but boy, oh boy, if I wasn't feeling cheerier when I was done. And that has nothing to do with the actual individual things, right? That doesn't have anything to do with the things. Really what a video like that is a reminder that you have things to be cheerful about. You have things that are trying to pick up your spirits. Certainly the individual things in Gina's video didn't do it. I don't have a big stereo system with CDs and vinyl and whatnot. I have no sense of touch in my fingers, and I don't care about such things. Can you imagine the havoc I would reach if I were allowed anywhere near such a thing? And like most people on BookTube, I don't think I would read a Miss Reed novel again if I had a gun to my face. And that's to say nothing of the cats. Need I go on about the cats? It wasn't the individual. It wasn't the individual things. It was that they were cheering her up, and that cheered me up, and that felt great. You should watch this video. You're gonna love it. And right around the same time, I watched a video from Troy Tradup, who's a new addition to our what I used to call our little corner of BookTube. He's an absolute natural. If you haven't subscribed to his channel, you really should. He's an absolute natural. In the kind of wavelength that we do here, right? Where we're collecting our thoughts ahead of time, but it's mostly a personal contact here that we're doing. He's a natural at that. I'm glad that he's joined BookTube. And he did a venting video of the things that are bothering him. A handful of things that are bothering him lately. And it was the mirror image of Gina's video. Some of the things were minor, some were a little more major, some were persistent, some were very temporary, of things that were cheesing him off. And it occurred to me that I wanted to do responses to both of those videos. And I thought, well, why not make it one video and maybe do it regularly? Why not do a cheese and please video? Things that are cheesing me off and things that are pleasing me. 3 each. Why not do that? I'm old and crotchety with smallpox scars from 1872. It stands to reason there'll be plenty of things that are cheesing me off. And it might be fun to share some things that are pleasing me. So I'm going to do that in this video. I'm going to list 3 things that cheesed me off recently and 3 things that pleased me recently for a cheese and please video. So number 1, the first thing that cheeses, I'll start with the things that irritated me. The first thing that cheeses me off is something I've complained about on this channel before. Other people on BookTube have complained about this, Sean Standfast among them. And that is liars on eBay. And here I'm not talking about people who are looking at a scratch or a dent or a stain or a rip and estimating it different than you would estimate it. Well, it doesn't look all that bad to me. I'm not talking about those people. I don't believe those people are on eBay anymore. I'm talking about people who are flat out lying. I have a book here. It's full of neon yellow highlighting. I am going to write in the description of the book that it is completely clean of any markings. Just a flat out black and white lie. I'm going to hope to induce you to buy the book based on that lie, and I'm going to count on the fact that you aren't willing to go through the rigmarole of returning it, and that you probably aren't going to go to the bother of torpedoing my customer rating by persistently noting that I lied to you. I'm going to count on that. I'm going to count on the systemic inertia to let me get away with this, whether it's a stain on a book, a rip on a dust jacket, highlighting in a book, or tech, where I have discovered that lying is rampant, absolutely rampant, even when the seller is confronted directly, where you've got an item in front of you, a tech item in front of you on eBay, and there's a little box at the bottom that says, care to ask the seller a question before you buy. That's an option on eBay. There's a whole bunch of preset questions that you can do because there are frequently asked questions, but you can ask an individual question. You can send an email to the seller ahead of time. And I'm talking about a situation where, let's say you have a Chromebook or a MacBook that you're thinking about buying, and you use that option and ask the seller point blank, is this device password protected? At all. On any level, anywhere along its line, is it going to ask me for a password? Anywhere. You probably got this because it was, de-accessed by a school or a company. It's likely that somewhere along the line a password protection was put in there, an administration password. Does this device have such a thing? The reason you would ask such a question is because if it has such a thing, the seller has to know it in order to tell it to you, and it has to work. If the seller doesn't know it, or if the information they have doesn't work, you have bought a $200 paperweight. You can't do anything with a device that's password protected. There's no way to get around it. There's no way to do that unless you're the ultimate wonky computer expert, and I'm not. I'm talking about a situation where you send an email like that to a seller, and they write back promptly and say, no, it's not password protected at all, and you get it in the mail, and it is. Where the first thing, literally the first thing that it does once it powers up is ask you for an admin password. You swallow your rage, you email the seller and say, you told me this wasn't password protected. It is. What is the password? And they say, because they're counting on you not going through the bother of making it personal. They're counting on that. I had a seller do that recently, and it's been on my mind because I'm thinking about making another purchase on eBay. And because of that, I am thinking about that previous seller who dug in their heels on a number of different levels, not just the uselessness of the machine, but also whether or not they would even ship it on time, in a timely manner, and whether or not they would even check on where it had gone, what kind of Bermuda Triangle it had sailed into, to the point where they irritated me to the point where, a bit of this drama I actually did out on this channel, they irritated me to the point where I did not want recompense. I wanted them off eBay. And that required a lawyer. And that got eBay's attention because my lawyer made it clear to them that if they didn't give me the satisfaction of visual screenshot proof that this seller is no longer on eBay, they were at fault. And my lawyer is pretty feisty. he likes to do stuff like this, gets him out of bed in the morning. That got eBay's attention, and that worked, but it took a long time. It took a long time and an outlay of money, and it along the way generated a genuinely apologetic email from the original seller saying, I make a significant side income from my store on eBay. I would really appreciate it if you would take my apologies and let me make this right. And I had to write back and say, we have corresponded with each other 21 times, and 11 of those 21 times were you bald-faced lying to me. I have inquired at this specific post office. Turns out, a little bit of persuasion, a little bit of charm on the phone, and a little bit of persistence proves that their own records show you didn't check with them. That was just a lie. You have been lying all along, starting with the original lie, which is that you're sending me a piece of machinery that's useless. So no. My answer is no. I don't believe your apology. I don't believe you would ever make it right. You are a danger to every seller on this platform. You need to be gone. I don't care how much money you're making from your store on eBay. You're a liar. You're a fraud. So naturally, as you can see, that has been working me up because I'm thinking about dipping my toe back into those waters. So that's the first thing that's cheesing me off, is that I stand a better than 70% chance in any interaction on eBay of dealing with a flat-out, bald-faced liar. And that's pretty irritating. then second thing that's cheesing me off is a bit of insider baseball. It won't really apply to any of you. A lot of you have probably dealt with fraudulent sellers on eBay. But another thing that's bothering me is very low-key. It's a very low-key thing. I've mentioned it before on this channel. It deals with my profession. Those of you who are new to this channel, I am a book reviewer by profession. It's all I do. I don't have a teaching gig or a side gig of any kind. I just review books for a living. And so I deal with publicists and publishers all day long. And COVID-19 changed that relationship fundamentally for the better part of a year, more than a year. Because suddenly, physical books weren't going out. And suddenly, publicists weren't going into their offices. So they weren't tipping in sell sheets. They couldn't see what they had and what they didn't have. It was all coming from warehouses, and even then, charily and slowly. And that changed the relationship between reviewers, freelancers, editors, I'm all three of those, and publicists. Because publicists were suddenly sending out electronic copies to people who specifically asked for them. It was no longer blind blanket mailing where you're on our list, you get 40 mailings from us in the course of a book selling season. And every publisher says that, so you get lots and lots of books. You've seen in the past on this channel, I used to get bucket loads of books. It's no longer birdshot like that. And since it's more individual and more trackable and traceable, it led a lot of publicists to think, well, maybe I should ask more questions about this process. Maybe it shouldn't be birdshot. And that was a bad conclusion to come to even in 2020. It was never true. And it's amazing how it has stayed true. That's the second thing that's cheesing me off. Very insider baseball. It's that a lot of that attitude has stayed true, even now in what we maybe a little foolishly call post-pandemic days. Everyone's back in their offices now, at least part-time. Everyone's back in the warehouses. Books are still going out. They're going out more than they were. And yet, that attitude still sticks around, where publicists will feel like they can ask you for a status report. So I sent you a copy of this book. Once upon a time, they wouldn't have even cared. It would have just been, you're on my list. These other 300 people are on my list. I'm just sending out a gigantic mass of books. And, you know, I might write to you down the line and tell you that I'm enthusiastic about this one release, but nothing like checking in on your work progress. I sent you this book. I'm wondering if you got it. Okay, that's fine. That's totally legitimate. And a response to that will be, yes, I got it. Thanks. Anything more than that is not fine. Pandemic or no pandemic. Writing a follow-up email saying, hey, it's been 2 weeks. I'm wondering, have you started it yet? And can you tell me anything about what you think or about what your coverage plans are? That's not how it works. That's not how it's ever worked. You risk the price of postage for someone who has a large audience. I have a couple of large audiences. And there are plenty of reviewers out there who have audiences that dwarf mine. You risk the postage to send a book to someone who has a large audience, because if they like the book, they're going to generate sales far in excess of the little amount of effort that you went to get the book to them. And that's it. That's it. That's the end of the process. If they review it, you luck out. If they don't, you're out the price of postage. With franking, it's not that much money. But that's it. It's not a process that you can goose or negotiate or monitor. And a little thing that's cheesing me now is that some publicists do that more aggressively than others, and it never fails to nonplus me. I get an email like that, and I honestly don't know how to respond. I don't want to be curt. I don't want to write back and say, I got the book, and as to the rest of your email, I don't give progress reports. I don't want to do that. And yet that is the case. And I don't have any variation on that to say that's any more palatable. So I just go silent, and I hate that. I hate it when people don't respond to emails. Whether it's arranging a read-along or whether it's in a professional venue, I just can't stand that, and I don't do it. I try not to. I get buried in emails every day, but I try to answer everything at least briefly. So that's my second thing that's cheesing me off is a persistent monitoring behavior among book publicists that should have disappeared in late 2021. At the very latest, it should have disappeared then. And then the third thing that's cheesing me off is a big one, but sometimes they can be big, right? And that is the U.S. healthcare system, the whole of the U.S. healthcare system, which is, those of you who don't live here, you will have certainly read about it. If you do live in America, you will certainly know about it. It's ridiculously, mustache-twirlingly, villainously expensive, predatorily expensive, with nothing in the way of subsidization, realistically in this country, healthcare should be free to everybody. All of it, free to everybody. Realistically, that should be the case. Maybe you pay a little bit more if it's a healthcare problem that you brought on yourself, but otherwise, no, it's just free. It is ridiculous in a country that spends $3 trillion on its defense budget, in a world that has no enemies, that it can't. I mean, a few $1 trillion, a couple of $1 trillion shaved off the Pentagon's budget would make this easily possible. Instead, because legislators are in the pocket, they are the paid underlings of big pharma, big medicine, big industry, big insurance. Because they're paid functionaries of these lobbying groups, it'll never happen when it financially easily could. It would be easy to do. And it would be beneficial to the United States. Obviously, it would be beneficial to do that. It would help the country in every measurable way. And yet, piddling little gestures here and there, chipping away around the edges, are suggested and rigorously debated in a Congress that could divert 150,000 times the amount of money necessary easily. So that's my third thing that's cheesing me off, is just out of the blue, the predatory nature of the U.S. healthcare system. It crushes people. It bankrupts people. The smallest little thing gives you a life-changing bill. Even if you have insurance, it tends to give you a life-changing bill. Certainly, if not life-changing, even with insurance, it gives you a bill that you can't shrug it off. It's big. So, and without insurance, you're going to die. You're going to die in your 50s of something that the same thing would have killed someone in their 50s in the 13th century. There was no health care and no health insurance in the wealthiest country in the world. Anyway, that's the third thing that's cheesing me off. So those are three things that are cheesing me off. And then we'll finish with three things that are pleasing me. Because they do exist. So number one is reading related. And that is that in 2023 so far, those of you who may be new to the channel, most of my reading is new releases. American new releases in the 15 or 16 genres that really interest me. I do most of my reading in that. I do most of my reviewing in that. That is a large part of my reading world, a huge part of my reading world, probably 80%. But I leave a section aside for rereading, and that's not just rereading paperbacks of last year's new releases or new editions of classics or anything like that. That's also serendipitous finds that I get at church basement or a charity shop or the Brattle Bookshop or anything like that. It's serendipitous finds. Where would reading be without those older books? There are 700 million older books that I haven't read, and plenty of them I've never heard of. Where would my reading would be considerably more? It would lose a lot of joy if it didn't have that serendipitous note to it. So there's a rereading element that I make sure to keep in my reading in every year and in every month of every year. And the first thing that's pleasing me in 2023 is very young. We're just in the beginning of February, but my rereading this year has been really good. Really good. Much better than my reading so far. Much better than new releases so far. Now that the new releases always come out ahead, they will gain ground. And rereading, I'll hit some really bad parts and that will lose ground. But that's one thing that's pleasing me, is that my rereading, I've been tempted all year long to bump it up to 50%, which I cannot do, and still cover the bailiwick that I like to cover in any year. There's no way that I can do that. I need to devote a huge amount of my time to reading new releases. And I do enjoy that. But the rereading has been very good this year. And then the second thing that's pleasing me, just for this video, I'll make other videos like this, but just for this video, the second thing that's pleasing me is my little dog. For those of you, again, who are new to the channel, you're not seeing her in this video. She's asleep right over there on the bed. But I have a little miniature schnauzer named Frida. She was not planned. None of my dogs are ever planned. She came to me out of the blue at 8 weeks old, and she came to me when I had a very old dog, an old, blind, incontinent pointer. And that pointer was not interested really in living. The only person that she'd ever loved had died a few months before. So she wasn't around long with that little puppy before she was gone. And then it's just been this dog and me. This is one of the very, very rare times in my life when I've only had one dog. And the reason Frida's on a list of things that please me anyway, at any time. But the reason she's on this list specifically is because in this year so far, she has been extra wonderful. I think, as amazing as it is to even think about it, I think she might be mellowing a bit. Just a bit. I've noticed that she is she's a very agreeable dog anyway. Boy, oh boy. All the things that I have read my whole life about terriers and how they rat and they are mousers, but they were also bred to live indoors. They were bred to live with humans. They were bred to be with humans. Boy, oh boy, can you see that? I mean, beagles are very much human dogs. All dogs are very much human dogs, but beagles, the dogs that I've spent most of my life with, they very much had a large part of their makeup, their personality, their instincts that was out in the field, that was out in the woods, that didn't have anything to do with being in a house or living with you. A large part of it did, but a large part of it didn't. But for this terrier, and I've heard many, many terriers are like this, they are very much house dogs. And so Frida has always been like that, and that's been wonderful. But in this year, I've noticed she's a little bit calmer when we meet other dogs. She's a lot calmer when she's in the house, perfectly amenable to just hanging out for hours at a time. Just it's been wonderful. If anything, she is getting sweeter as time goes on. If this is, I don't know if it's just a phase she's going through, and maybe she's going to go back to being a nightmare in March or something. But if this betokens the future, if she's just going to just get geometrically sweeter as she gets older, I don't know how I'm going to take that. I don't know my heart's going to take that. So she's thing number 2. And then thing number 3 of the things that are pleasing me lately. So this is Gina's fault, and this is also Troy's fault. The thing number 3 that's pleasing me is a piece of tech. I know I started by complaining about vendors of tech, but I have a tech cabinet, and it's full of stuff. And I went through the tech cabinet at the beginning of this year, at the end of last year, and I found a device. I found a Chromebook. Now, I love Chromebooks. I love the whole idea behind them. I'm sure you know what they are. They're cheap laptops that operate, their operating system is Google Chrome. And they are really doorways to that operating system. They don't really have much in the way of hardware themselves. Limited amount of storage, limited amount of things you can do offline, but they are meant to be used in conjunction with Google Chrome, which has Google Docs, it has the Google search engine, it has Gmail, it has a million things. You can very much live in the Google Chrome system. You very much can, unless you have extremely specific and specified Android or Mac functions that you need to do. If you're just an online user like I am, generating documents, consuming content, emailing people, emailing documents, converting documents, making videos, that sort of thing, all of that can be done on a Chromebook easily. And as a result, because I love the idea of a Chromebook, and I also, they're dirt cheap. You can get a fully functional Chromebook for $30 on eBay if you don't find somebody who's a liar. Because I love that, I use them all the time. And at one point last year, I bought a Chromebook because of its form factor. You don't buy a Chromebook for its software or its hardware. You buy it for its form factor. All Chromebooks do the same thing. They connect you to Google Chrome, and from there you're off to the races because you don't need anything else. If you're in the Google system, it's doing everything for you, and it's not on the computer. It's online. So really, when it comes to picking a Chromebook, you want to pick form factor. You want to pick physical details about the device itself. And that probably accounts for why I have so many of them, because I want to try a whole bunch of different versions. And at one point, I picked a Chromebook, an 11-inch, smaller form factor, very much congenial to typing. I picked an 11-inch Chromebook that was very much pitched towards schools, primary schools and high schools, because it sold itself on being ultra durable. It's a heavy, squat thing with rubberized borders around all the edges and around all the ports. And a big, thick power cord that nothing is going to snap off this thing. The hinges are extra duty. It's this. It's this thing. As you can see, the edges, I don't know how you're going to be able to make it out. They're not discolored in any way, but the edges are all rubberized. Look at the port for the power cord is rubberized. All of these things have borders, and it's got extra heavy hinges on the sides. It's just this heavy graphite production. It's got speakers in the hinge, so they're coming right out at you, as opposed to firing on the bottom of the device like so many of them do. It reminded me, when I was shopping, when I was looking at it online, and I was looking at reviews of it, I think this is a few years old, it reminded me of the desktop computers that you see in Star Trek The Next Generation on Captain Picard's desk, or Star Trek Voyager, where they all have their data pads, but there's also a machine that is mounted onto the desk of the captain. And it reminded me of that. That's why I gave it this background. That's my favorite background for wallpaper on a computer. And I love this thing. At first, I didn't. When I first got it, I really liked how durable it is. Oh my God, because I punish my stuff. And I know that about myself, and I know that's not going to change. And that's not conducive to a MacBook. MacBooks are thoroughbreds. You can hurt them. I know, because I've hurt my share of them. This thing you can't hurt at all. I got it. I played around with it for a bit, and I noticed that the keys were sticky. I would often press the same key a couple of times to get it to do something. And I thought nothing of it. I thought, I got it. It was probably $60 or $50, something like that. I got it. I tried it. I put it away. Didn't think about it. Put it out of my mind. Went back to other machines. And then at the end of last year, when I had my tech apocalypse, I was talking to a friend of mine, a tech-savvy friend of mine who has a YouTube channel. And he said, if that's a concern of yours, if that's why you put it away, you should take it out again, because Chromebooks, some of them, especially Dell, tend to ship stiff. They tend to, the action of the keys tends to loosen up the more you use it. And he jokingly pointed out, and the way you pound on a keyboard, you're going to loosen it up pretty quick. And he was absolutely right. That did happen. So I got to enjoy the rubber runners on this thing, the rubber edges to this thing. And I did a ton of work on this at the end of the year and at the beginning of this year. A ton of work, and loved it. Fell in love with it to the extent where I gave it a name. I give all my stuff names, and I'm now calling this the Trek Book. Not a Chromebook. It's a Trek Book. And one thing I noticed that I didn't notice at first is that this is a touchscreen. I didn't notice that. I was using it for weeks without knowing that. And then one time I was using it and I was looking at a website and I saw a speck of smudge on the screen, and I went to wipe it and the screen moved. It was like that. You might have seen that meme that went around online of a local weather guy who realized in the middle of a live broadcast that his huge screen was a touchscreen, that he could move it around, and he was so overjoyed he broke the fourth wall. I felt the same way. So it's a great machine, and the power cord is incredibly strong. The battery life on all Chromebooks is really, really good. My Trek Book is definitely pleasing me. Definitely. It is easily my favorite piece of tech right now. As horrendous as that is for all the MacBooks I have, it definitely is. So there you go. That is a list of 3 things that are cheesing me off and 3 things that are pleasing me. That is a cheese and please video here on BookTube. And I want to make more of these. I want to make these on a regular basis because they're a lot of fun. They really do they exercise a few of the demons. And I also want to encourage you to do this. I am always interested in this kind of video from any of you. Always. So if you want to do your own cheese and please video, pick 3 things that are cheesing you off and 3 things that are pleasing you, and let us all hear about them. I would love to hear that kind of a video. So there you go. just a random thing I thought, inspired by 2 of my favorite booktubers. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.